They say invention is the child of genius. But what if it's actually the child of chaos, greed, and dumb luck? From sticky notes born out of failure to heroes who stole credit and rewrote history, these are the 40 biggest lies about the inventions that shaped our world. And the truth is way uglier than you think. 1. Ever wonder how the world's most useful office supply was born? Not from a stroke of genius, but from a complete and utter failure. The story of the Post-it note isn't about someone trying to create a reusable bookmark. It's about Dr. Spencer Silver, a scientist at 3M who in 1968 accidentally created a ridiculously weak adhesive. It was a solution without a problem that he couldn't get anyone interested in for years. The hero of the story is another 3M employee, Art Fry, who was sick of his paper bookmarks falling out of his church hymn book. He remembered Silver's useless glue, applied it to some paper, and the iconic, semi-sticky note was born. So next time you jot down a reminder, thank a failed superglue and a guy who just really didn't want to lose his page. 2. Take a look down at your keyboard. That chaotic jumble of letters you've spent years mastering? It was meticulously designed to be terrible. The QWERTY layout wasn't created for ergonomic comfort or typing speed. It was a brilliant piece of anti-engineering meant to deliberately slow you down. Early mechanical typewriters had physical arms that would jam if a typist went too fast and hit adjacent keys in quick succession. So, inventor Christopher Sholes strategically separated common letter pairs to physically prevent the machine from breaking. We're all still using a 150-year-old patch for a hardware problem that died before our grandparents were born. That's not innovation. It's a technological ghost haunting our fingertips. 3. The satisfying raw rip of Velcro sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. And for decades, people believed it was. A high-tech wonder gifted to us by NASA for their space missions, right? Wrong. The truth is far more down-to-earth and, frankly, a bit hairy. In 1941, a Swiss engineer named Georges de Mestral went for a hike in the Alps with his dog. He came home covered in burrs, and instead of just being annoyed, he got curious. He put one under a microscope and saw a simple, elegant system of tiny hooks clinging to the loops in his clothes and his dog's fur. It took him years to replicate it, but that's the true origin. NASA was just a customer. The real inventor was Mother Nature, and a guy who paid attention to his dog. 4. The image is iconic. Thomas Edison, a lone genius in his lab, having a eureka moment as the first light bulb flickers to life. It's a great story, and almost entirely PR. Edison didn't invent the light bulb. He perfected it. Dozens of inventors had built electric lamps before him, including Joseph Swan and Humphrey Davy. Edison's genius wasn't in sparking the first glow. It was in creating the system that made electric light practical. He developed a long-lasting filament, an affordable bulb, and most importantly, the entire electrical network to power homes and cities. Edison didn't invent the light bulb. He invented the world it could live in. 5. Charles Darrow, an unemployed man ruined by the Great Depression, invented the game Monopoly in his basement, became a millionaire, and saved Parker Brothers from bankruptcy. This is the ultimate rags-to-riches story, printed right inside the game's box for decades. It's also a complete fabrication. The game was actually invented around 1904 by a progressive woman named Elizabeth Magie, and it was called the Landlord's Game. Her goal was to teach players about the dangers of wealth consolidation and monopolies. The game was popular in intellectual circles for decades, with people adding their own house rules. Darrow just played a version of it, tweaked it, and sold it as his own. So, the game you play that celebrates crushing your friends through capitalism was created by someone trying to warn you about it. The irony is richer than Uncle Pennybags himself. 6. How does one secure a legacy as a champion of peace? By inventing something so terrifyingly destructive that you become universally known as the Merchant of Death, and have to spend your entire fortune on a PR campaign to fix it. This isn't a joke. It's the life story of Alfred Nobel. He invented dynamite not for warfare, but as a safer alternative for construction and mining. But when a French newspaper mistakenly published his obituary, calling him a man who became rich by finding ways to kill more people faster than ever before, Nobel was horrified. He spent the rest of his life and his massive fortune establishing the Nobel Prizes, including the famous Peace Prize, in a desperate and ultimately successful attempt to rebrand himself from a bringer of death to a patron of humanity. 7. The microwave oven feels like a futuristic food hydrator beamed down from a starship. Its actual origin story is less Star Trek and more guy gets distracted by a snack. In 1945, a self-taught engineer named Percy Spencer was working on active radar sets for Raytheon. During one test, he walked past a magnetron tube and noticed the peanut cluster in his pocket had melted into a gooey mess. Any normal person would have cursed their luck and cleaned their pants. Spencer, however, was not a normal person. His next move? He aimed the tube at an egg, which promptly exploded in his colleague's face. Then he tried popcorn. The modern kitchen was forever changed because a man of science decided to weaponize military technology against his lunch. 8. You've been sold a sanitized tale of the Wright brothers, two humble bicycle mechanics who, through sheer American ingenuity, conquered the skies. The truth is a far more savage story of corporate espionage, paranoia, and a bitter rivalry with the establishment. Their main competitor, Samuel Langley, was backed by the Smithsonian and a $50,000 government grant. Just 9 days before the Wright's success, Langley's much-hyped aerodrome spectacularly flopped into the Potomac River. The brothers, meanwhile, were so secretive they would haul their machine back under a tarp to hide it from spies. The Smithsonian was so salty about losing the race that for decades they falsely displayed Langley's failure as the first plane capable of flight, a petty passive-aggressive lie that lasted until 1948. 9. Imagine this pitch. An exiled Mexican dictator and a New York inventor team up to revolutionize the world with a new form of rubber made from chicle, the sap of a sapodilla tree. This bizarre partnership between Thomas Adams and General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna was real, and it was a catastrophic failure. After wasting a ton of money trying to vulcanize the stuff into tires and rain boots, Adams was about to dump the entire worthless batch into the East River. But then he recalled seeing Santa Anna sullenly chewing bits of the chicle. In a moment of sheer desperation and defeat, Adams added some flavoring, packaged it as Adams New York Gum, and accidentally created the modern chewing gum industry. It was a billion-dollar idea born from giving up. 10. Everyone loves the joke that Al Gore invented the internet. The lie we actually believe is that it was designed for collaboration and connecting the world. In reality, the internet's ancestor, ARPANET, was a hardcore product of the Cold War. It was conceived by the US military's research agency, DARPA, for one brutally pragmatic reason: to create a decentralized communication network that could survive a full-scale Soviet nuclear attack. The goal was to ensure that even if Washington and Moscow were smoldering craters, someone, somewhere, could still fire back. So the global network you now use to watch cat videos and argue about pineapple on pizza was fundamentally designed to manage nuclear apocalypse. Sleep well. 11. Alexander Fleming's discovery of penicillin is legendary. He returns from vacation to find a magical mold killing bacteria in a petri dish he forgot to clean. But this eureka moment wasn't a triumph of scientific method. It was a testament to his legendary untidiness. Fleming was a notoriously messy researcher. Any other scientist would have sterilized the dish. He just got lucky. And here's the kicker. He couldn't figure out how to mass-produce it. He published his findings in 1929, but the discovery remained a scientific curiosity. It took another team of scientists at Oxford over a decade later to turn his happy accident into the world-saving drug we know today. Fleming basically found a winning lottery ticket and then used it as a bookmark. 12. Guglielmo Marconi is celebrated as the father of radio, but that title's more complicated than it looks. Marconi was a superb engineer and marketer, but his transmitters were built on discoveries already made by Nikola Tesla, Oliver Lodge, and others. The U.S. Patent Office initially rejected Marconi's patent, citing Tesla's prior work. Only after Marconi's fame exploded did the decision flip. Then, in 1943, the U.S. Supreme Court reinstated Tesla's key patents, just months after his death. It didn't erase Marconi's brilliance, but it made clear that radio was born from a crowded room of minds, not one lone genius with an antenna. 13. That refreshing bottle of bubbly sugar water you're drinking wasn't born in a boardroom as a global brand strategy. It began its life in a 19th-century pharmacy as a patent medicine, a quasi-magical nerve tonic that promised to cure everything from headaches to impotence. Its creator, a pharmacist named John Pemberton, brewed this concoction with ingredients like coca leaves and cola nuts. The original Coca-Cola was marketed not as a treat, but as a cure-all for the anxieties of modern life. It was a spectacular failure as a medicine. It only became a global phenomenon when its medical claims were dropped, and it was repositioned as a simple, non-medicinal refreshment. Its true genius wasn't in its formula, but in its ability to fail upwards. 14. In the delicate world of cardiac research, precision is everything. Unless, of course, a clumsy mistake saves millions of lives. In 1958, engineer Wilson Greatbatch was building a device to record heart sounds. He reached into a box for a specific 10,000 ohm resistor, but accidentally grabbed a 1 mega ohm one, 100 times stronger. When he plugged it in, the circuit didn't just work. It produced a perfect, steady electrical pulse that mimicked a human heartbeat. Any other engineer would have cursed his mistake and started over. Greatbatch stared at the rhythmic pulse and realized he had just accidentally created the world's first reliable, implantable pacemaker. The beating heart of modern medicine was born from grabbing the wrong damn part. 15. We picture Galileo Galilei, a solitary genius grinding lenses by candlelight to invent the telescope and reveal the heavens. The reality is less poetic and far more opportunistic. Galileo didn't invent the telescope. He heard rumors of a new Dutch toy, a spyglass, that could make distant objects appear closer. Realizing its potential, he didn't just copy it. He reverse-engineered and radically improved it in a matter of days, creating a version powerful enough for astronomy. His genius wasn't in the initial invention, but in recognizing that a tool for sea captains could be a weapon to shatter humanity's entire understanding of the cosmos. He was the ultimate early adopter who saw the universe's source code while everyone else was just looking at a cool gadget. 16. The guillotine's reputation is soaked in blood, but its creator's hands never were. Dr. Joseph Ignace Guillotin didn't design the machine that bears his name. He proposed a humane, standardized method of execution that would be quick and equal for all, rich or poor. The actual device was engineered by surgeon Antoine Louis and built by a craftsman named Tobias Schmidt. Guillotin himself was horrified when his name became attached to it, and his family later begged the French government to rename the machine. He wanted to make death less cruel. History turned him into its mascot instead. 17. Some inventions require decades of research, massive teams, and billions in funding. Others are born when a clumsy engineer knocks something off a shelf. In 1943, naval engineer Richard James was working to develop springs that could stabilize sensitive instruments on warships. He accidentally dropped one of his prototypes, and instead of just clattering to the floor, it gracefully walked down a stack of books and onto the ground. That's it. That's the entire origin story of the Slinky. A moment of pure dumb luck and physics. He spent the next 2 years perfecting the steel and tension, but the core discovery was an accident that any one of us would have just cleaned up and forgotten about. 18. The invention of the sewing machine wasn't a sweet tale of progress. It was a knife fight in a patent office. Elias Howe patented the crucial lock-stitch mechanism in 1846, but when Isaac Singer saw the design, he built his own version, improved it for home use, and flooded the market. Singer's real skill wasn't in mechanics, it was in marketing. He invented installment payments, aggressive ads, and lawsuits as a business strategy. Howe eventually sued and won, forcing Singer to pay massive royalties. The sewing machine didn't have one inventor. It had one genius engineer and one ruthless capitalist who stitched his name into history. 19. In the early 1990s, Pfizer scientists were diligently searching for a drug to treat angina, a type of chest pain. The clinical trials for their new compound, sildenafil, were a crushing disappointment. It was useless for treating heart conditions. The project was a failure. However, during the trials, nurses began to notice a pattern of unusual behavior. The male participants were reporting a very peculiar and surprisingly consistent side effect. The scientists quickly realized they hadn't created a heart medication at all. They had failed spectacularly at their original goal, but had accidentally stumbled upon Viagra, one of the most profitable and culturally significant drugs in modern history. It stands as a monument to the power of a truly magnificent failure. 20. The invention of safety glass, the stuff that keeps your windshield from shattering into a million deadly daggers, is a monument to clumsiness. In 1903, French chemist Edouard Benedictus was pottering around his lab when he fumbled and dropped a glass flask. Instead of smashing, it just cracked, the pieces clinging together in a spiderweb pattern. Baffled, he looked closer and remembered that the flask had recently held a solution of liquid plastic, which had evaporated and left a thin, invisible film on the inside. Most people would have swept it up and forgotten. But Benedictus, having recently read about a horrific car accident, had a flash of insight. His lab accident wasn't a mess. It was a solution. The invention that saves countless lives every day was born because a scientist had butterfingers. 21. Baseball's origin story is pure Americana and pure fiction. We're told that Abner Doubleday invented the game in a cow pasture in Cooperstown in 1839. In reality, he never wrote, played, or even mentioned baseball. The myth was cooked up in 1907 by a commission desperate to claim the sport as uniquely American, free from any British roots like cricket or rounders. The truth is that baseball evolved slowly from older bat and ball games across both sides of the Atlantic. Doubleday just happened to be a patriotic, dead war hero, perfect for marketing. The national pastime was built on a national lie. 22. Think vulcanized rubber was invented in a sterile lab by a methodical scientist? Think again. Its discovery was the result of a chronically broke, borderline obsessed amateur named Charles Goodyear, who accidentally created one of the most important materials of the Industrial Revolution in a fit of rage. For years, Goodyear had been frantically mixing rubber with every substance he could think of, from salt to ink, trying to make it stable. One day in 1839, while demonstrating his latest failed concoction, he got so frustrated that he threw a piece of sulfur-mixed rubber, which landed on a hot potbelly stove. Instead of melting, it charred like leather, creating a tough, flexible, waterproof material. It was a tantrum that changed the world. 23. Stainless steel, the backbone of modern kitchens and surgery, wasn't the product of a dedicated search for a rust-proof metal. It was a happy accident born from the scrap heap of weapons development. In 1912, a metallurgist from Sheffield, England named Harry Brearley was tasked with finding a more durable metal for gun barrels that wouldn't erode from friction and heat. He tested numerous alloys, tossing the failed experiments into a pile in the corner. Months later, he noticed that while the rest of the scrap pile was a rusty mess, one of his discarded chromium steel alloys was still gleaming. He hadn't found a better gun barrel, but he had found something far more valuable, a metal that refused to tarnish. 24. We're told John Harvey Kellogg invented cornflakes as part of a bland, sexless diet to promote clean living at his sanatorium. That part is mostly true. The lie is that it was an intentional invention. He and his brother, Will Keith Kellogg, were actually trying to make a type of boiled wheat dough. One day, they left a batch sitting out for too long. When they returned, the dough had gone stale, but they decided to force it through the rollers anyway. Instead of a single sheet, out came individual flakes, They toasted them and realized they had created a surprisingly popular, albeit accidental, breakfast. The asexual health food empire was built on a foundation of letting the dough go bad. 25. You think bubble wrap was always destined to be the world's most satisfying stress reliever? Not even close. Its journey began in 1957 when two engineers tried to create a trendy, textured 3D plastic wallpaper. Unsurprisingly, nobody wanted to live inside a bubbly plastic bag, and the product was a colossal failure. Undeterred, they tried to pivot, marketing it as greenhouse insulation. That failed too. The invention was on life support until they pitched it to a struggling new tech company called IBM, which was looking for a way to protect its fragile new 1401 computer during shipping. A failed interior design choice accidentally became the guardian of the digital age. 26. The lie detector test sounds like science, but it began more like a parlor experiment. Psychologist William Moulton Marston, later the creator of Wonder Woman, believed blood pressure revealed lies, an idea inspired by observing his wife's emotional reactions. Around the same time, police officer John Larson built the first practical polygraph to measure multiple body signals at once. The result looked futuristic, but it was always shaky science. The polygraph's roots lie in psychology, improvisation, and a comic book creator's obsession with truth. That's why, to this day, it's more dramatic prop than courtroom proof. 27. We're taught that James Watt invented the steam engine while watching a kettle boil. This charming story is a complete fabrication, likely invented by his son to make his father's legacy more relatable. Watt didn't invent the steam engine. He significantly improved an existing, laughably inefficient one. The first commercially successful engine was built by Thomas Newcomen 50 years earlier. It was a lumbering beast used to pump water out of mines, but it wasted a colossal amount of energy. Watt's genius was in adding a separate condenser, a brilliant modification that tripled its efficiency. He was less of a revolutionary inventor and more of the world's greatest performance tuner, the guy who took a gas-guzzling muscle car and turned it into a hyper-efficient machine that would power the Industrial Revolution. 28. The story of Teflon is the story of a failed experiment that became a kitchen icon. In 1938, a chemist at DuPont named Roy Plunkett was working on a new refrigerant gas. He stored his tetrafluoroethylene gas in pressurized cylinders. One morning, he came in to find that a cylinder that should have been full was apparently empty. Frustrated and confused, he sawed the cylinder open. Inside, he found a bizarre, waxy white powder that was incredibly slippery and inert to almost every chemical. The experiment was a total bust. This useless new substance sat on a shelf for years until engineers realized its non-stick properties were perfect for military applications and, eventually, for preventing your eggs from sticking to the pan. A multi-billion-dollar product was born from a canister of gas that just wouldn't come out. 29. Aspirin didn't come from a corporate R&D dream. It came from one chemist defying his boss to help his dad. In the 1890s, Bayer's Felix Hoffmann was trying to find a painkiller that wouldn't destroy his father's stomach. He secretly revisited an abandoned compound, acetyl salicylic acid, and refined it into a stable, safe powder. Some historians argue a colleague, Arthur Eichengrün, guided the process, but Hoffmann's persistence got it produced. At first, Bayer wasn't impressed, until doctors raved about its effects. The result became one of the world's most successful drugs. Aspirin was born from quiet rebellion and family loyalty, not corporate strategy. 30. The automatic dishwasher wasn't invented by a frustrated housewife, but by a wealthy socialite who was furious that her servants kept chipping her fine china. Josephine Cochran, a prominent Illinois hostess, decided that if she wanted a job done right, she'd have to do it herself, or rather, build a machine to do it. With no engineering experience, she measured her dishes, designed custom wire compartments, and attached them to a wheel inside a copper boiler, powered by a motor. Her friends were so impressed that she patented her device in 1886. She initially marketed it to hotels and restaurants, as most homes at the time didn't have the hot water capacity to run it. The ultimate kitchen convenience was born not from a desire to save labor, but from the desire to protect luxury goods from the help. 31. The syringe seems like an obvious invention until you realize how recently it appeared. In the 1850s, two men working independently, Alexander Wood in Scotland and Charles Prevost in France, created the first practical hollow needles to deliver drugs beneath the skin. Wood modeled his on a bee's stinger, using it to inject morphine for nerve pain. He thought it would stay local. He was wrong, but the discovery transformed medicine forever. Two inventors, one idea, no internet. Just proof that great minds can sting alike. 32. Today, Play-Doh is a beloved, non-toxic children's toy. It began its life, however, as a grimy, utilitarian product designed to clean coal soot off wallpaper. In the 1930s, a soap company called Koodle Products created a putty-like substance that people could roll across their walls to lift away dirt. But after about feet, with the switch to cleaner gas and oil heating and the invention of washable vinyl wallpaper, the product was on the brink of extinction. The company was saved when a nursery school teacher, who happened to be the sister-in-law of one of the executives, read an article about using the wallpaper cleaner for arts and crafts projects. With a simple change, removing the detergent and adding color and a pleasant scent, a failed industrial cleaner was reborn as one of the most iconic toys of all time. 33. The lie isn't that Benjamin Franklin discovered electricity. It's the cartoonish image of him flying a kite in a thunderstorm, getting zapped, and shouting, "Eureka!" The reality was a far more controlled and less suicidal scientific experiment. Franklin theorized that lightning was a form of electricity, and his goal was to test it. He flew his kite in an approaching storm, not in the middle of it, and used a silk ribbon to insulate himself. He didn't get struck by lightning. He simply collected ambient electrical charge from the storm clouds, proving the connection. The key part of the experiment wasn't a lightning bolt, but a metal key tied to the string, which sparked when he brought his knuckle near it. He was a brilliant scientist, not a cartoon character with a death wish. 34. The discovery of anesthesia wasn't a noble crusade. It was a hangover from 19th century drug parties. Wealthy socialites hosted ether frolics and laughing gas soirees, stumbling around high for entertainment. During one of these, dentist Horace Wells noticed a man gashed his leg, yet felt no pain. That observation changed history. Wells began experimenting with nitrous oxide in surgery, sparking a furious race for credit between him, his former student William Morton, and chemist Charles Jackson. What started as party gas became a medical revolution, and a bitter feud that left everyone scarred. 35. The potato chip wasn't crafted by a culinary visionary. It was born out of petty revenge. In 1853, a picky customer at Moon's Lake House in Saratoga Springs kept sending back his fried potatoes, complaining they were too thick and soggy. Chef George Crumb finally lost it. Out of spite, he sliced the potatoes paper thin, fried them to a crisp, and dumped on the salt. Instead of being insulted, the customer loved them. Word spread, and Crumb's salty rebellion became the world's most addictive snack. Sometimes the best ideas are just well-seasoned rage. 36. That deafening roar of a chainsaw? It began as a medical tool. In the late 1700s, Scottish doctors John Aitken and James Jeffrey designed a small, hand-cranked chain device for cutting bone during surgery. It was meant to make amputations faster and cleaner, not fell trees. The design later inspired mechanized saws for logging, where the concept truly came to life. From operating rooms to forests, the chainsaw's evolution shows how humanity keeps finding louder ways to solve its problems. 37. You don't have bad breath. You have chronic halitosis. At least, that's the lie Listerine's marketers sold to the world. Listerine was invented in 1879 as a powerful surgical antiseptic and was later used for everything from cleaning floors to treating gonorrhea. As a product, it was a solution in search of a problem. Its sales were mediocre until the 1920s, when marketing genius Gerard Lambert latched onto the obscure medical-sounding term halitosis. They crafted ads depicting sad, lonely people whose social lives were ruined by their breath, creating a deep-seated social anxiety that didn't exist before. They didn't invent a mouthwash. They invented a modern insecurity and then sold us the cure. 38. The discovery of the X-ray was so accidental that its own inventor literally named it after the unknown. In 1895, Wilhelm Röntgen was experimenting with cathode rays in a blacked-out room when he noticed a fluorescent screen across the room started glowing. He had no idea what these mysterious, invisible rays were, so he simply called them X-rays, with X being the mathematical symbol for an unknown quantity. The discovery's true, chilling power became clear when he asked his wife to place her hand in the ray's path. When he showed her the resulting image, the first X-ray of a human body part, revealing her own bones, she reportedly gasped, "I have seen my death." 39. Henry Ford invented the automobile. This is one of the foundational lies of American industry. Saying Ford invented the car is like saying McDonald's invented the cow. The first true gasoline-powered automobile was patented by Carl Benz in 1886, years before Ford was even a serious player. Ford's actual genius, and it was genius, was in revolutionizing production with the moving assembly line. He didn't invent the car. He invented a way to make it so cheaply and quickly that the average worker could afford one. So, while he didn't create the automobile, you could absolutely credit him with inventing its inevitable and far more enduring byproduct, the traffic jam. 40. The idea that Thomas Crapper invented the modern flush toilet is one of history's most satisfying and completely false bits of trivia. The name is just too perfect, right? In reality, a functioning flushing water closet was invented for Queen Elizabeth I way back in 1596 by her godson, Sir John Harrington. Thomas Crapper was a master plumber and a brilliant marketer who lived in the late 19th century. He didn't invent the toilet, but he did improve and popularize it, holding several patents for mechanisms like the ball cock. And the cherry on top? The word crap is of medieval origin and predates him by centuries. His name didn't give us the slang. History just gave us the greatest bathroom-related coincidence of all time. Behind every great invention hides a mistake, a theft, or a polished lie. But here's the question. If you could erase one of these fake legends from history and let the real inventor get the credit, which one would it be? Drop it below, I'm reading every comment. And hit like and subscribe before someone else claims your idea.